The latest, hottest looter shooter on the market. Now that this game has been out for a couple months and the honeymoon phase is past, I thought it'd finally be time for me to give my honest thoughts on this game. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I've been looking forward to this game for a couple years actually. And I saw this game could have a ton of potential. The devs took a lot of the community feedback from the first couple of betas, they took it to heart, and they made big changes for the full game launch. Before we go over all the reasons I think this game is great, let's rip off the band-aid and talk about one of the barriers that I think will prevent this game from having a lot of future success if it isn't addressed. Every time I get asked whether this game is worth picking up or not, my first answer is yes. But you have to be able to bear through the first campaign playthrough. And what I mean by that, the first campaign playthrough is very long and it feels very repetitive. Granted, a lot of this game is about repetition. Doing it the first time, it feels like it drags a lot. If you can make it through the first playthrough though, I feel like it's smooth sailing. I'm not really too sure what the devs could do to fix this, but this was a huge pain point when I first started playing the full game. I didn't really have any issues with the first couple betas that they released, granted because it was only a fraction of the full campaign, but when I finally got to the full campaign, you definitely notice how long it takes. Most of the enjoyment from this game comes from everything after the campaign, whether it's piecing together crazy builds, unlocking multiple Descendants, unlocking multiple weapons, and then nuking all the normal and hard mode bosses. And then obviously, playing with your friends is fun too. And they've been pretty consistently dropping new content since launch just a couple months ago. Season 1 is already underway with multiple new Descendants, new weapons, and new bosses. I really cannot emphasize enough how much I commend the devs for being on top of the changes in this game. It can be extremely frustrating to be going into new content, have some bugs come along, only to have to wait like a really long time for any actual changes to be made. And that is not the case with this game at all. The devs are on top of their shit all the time. Anytime there's been like a big issue in the game, it's usually fixed same day or next day. They're also extremely attentive to player feedback, which I think is obviously very important, but they're still able to maintain a very grindy game while still doing that, which I think is extremely impressive. Alright, let's circle back to the Descendants. There are 16 different Descendants to choose from, all with unique abilities. You can swap them pretty much whenever you're not out in combat, which I think is super convenient. The one thing though I think is a little intimidating is maxing out a lot of Descendants. At this point I have over 100 hours into the game and I've really only kind of maxed 2.5 of the 8 Descendants that I own. The one thing that I did notice though while grinding out my first one is that once you have a really good build on one character, it makes farming for other ones a lot easier, because if you're able to nuke a boss, it can help you earn components and materials faster for another character, which is kind of nice. It still doesn't take away from the overall experience though, because when you do a new character, there is a lot more for you to do than you probably initially anticipate, which is, it can be a good thing and it can also be a bad thing. I guess it just depends on your reason for why you personally like the game. There are different reasons to have certain Descendants, but the 3 main categories that I think it comes down to is team play, damage output, or material farming. The 2 that I have maxed out at this point and I think are great starter recommendations are Bunny / Ultimate Bunny and Haley. If you're new, I would highly recommend Bunny being your first Descendant, as she's a very well-rounded character to use and she is excellent for material farming. And the faster that you're earning materials means the faster that you're able to level her up and use that to farm for other characters as well. And also not to mention that there are builds for Bunny that can actually be used really well for bossing, so she's not just useful for material farming. The second one is actually the one that was most recently released, Haley. She's more of a glass cannon build, but the barrier to entry to hitting crazy damage with her is a lot lower than it is with some of the other Descendants, which is great if you're newer to the game. And also her abilities are just really fun to use. Now over to the bosses. The intercept bosses that they introduced in this game I think are a great start. Lots of them have actual mechanics that you have to execute. It isn't just necessarily about being a bullet sponge. Assuming you don't nuke the boss in just 2 shots, of course. It can actually take a good amount of strategy to take down some of these bosses, especially if you're not being carried by someone who's already a maxed out character. And when we were doing our first run through the bosses, I do remember the timer actually getting pretty close. Like, the margins are pretty tight, especially on your first run through. The one thing that I wish would change at some point is the arena. Granted, this isn't the most important thing in the whole world, but fighting every single boss in basically the same arena can get kind of stale, and you kind of get bored of the environment. One thing that they did announce that I think is really exciting is they're doing a mega dungeon this winter. Don't really know what that entails, but it sounds awesome. I'm hoping that this is something that players from other looter shooters look forward to a lot, which is boss rushes. Either the mega dungeon being something like that I think would be super cool, or I'm praying that at some point they will add raids to the game. I think adding a raid to the game or multiple raids would be a great thing to add for the most dedicated of players. It would give them the next step to grind for and help evolve the game a little bit more. I think there could be a lot of traction behind that, especially in a game like this, if you added exclusive cosmetics, mods, and possibly some rare materials behind something like a raid. I've been very impressed overall though with the base game launch and what they've been able to do with Season 1, and I'm really looking forward to see what they're doing in the coming months. Alright guys, let's get it out of the way. Microtransactions. Everybody hates them, but I always find it very surprising why people always act like this is some revolutionary concept whenever a new free-to-play game comes out. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with having microtransactions in a free-to-play game, because obviously a business needs to make money. But I think there is a line in the sand to be crossed when it comes to the pricing of the items in the store. There are two main pain points I have with the store in this game: energy activators and ultimate descendants. So if you don't know, energy activators are basically a must-have for your descendants and your weapons, because when you use one, it increases your total mod capacity, meaning you're able to put more mods on your descendants or your weapons. It's basically one of those things that you must have. So if you want to skip the process of earning them in-game, you can also buy them in the store. But the problem is, the price tag on one energy activator, one-time use, is $24 versus the crystallization catalysts, which are also useful for optimizing your mod builds on descendants and weapons, are just $6 each. I think that they need to be a lot closer in price, probably $6 to $8 at most, especially if you're paying to build faster. And if you're someone who likes to play all the descendants and unlock all the weapons and really like max them out, it's going to take you an obnoxious amount of time to either earn all those energy activators or pay for them all. Now let's talk about Ultimate Descendants. All their abilities are the same, but they have marginally better stats across the board versus their regular counterparts. So if you really enjoy playing Viessa and you can see yourself spending a lot more time on Viessa, it might be worth investing your time or money into getting Ultimate Viessa. Earning Ultimate Descendants isn't something that's supposed to be easy and is supposed to take you a hot minute, which is also why they're providing the opportunity to just buy it instead. But all the packages for the Ultimate Descendants are either $60 or $100. And to be clear, in these packages, it's not just the Ultimate Descendant. You're also getting like those $24 energy activators or a crystallization catalyst and then some exclusive cosmetics. But I think that price tag is a little hefty. I gotta put it out there that I am guilty. I did bite the bullet and I bought a couple of Ultimate Descendants because I wanted to skip ahead and be able to go make some crazy builds with these characters because I didn't feel like waiting. But I still definitely didn't feel the greatest about spending that amount of money unlocking one character. I feel like you could cut the prices in half and it still might feel a little aggressive. Other than the energy activators and the Ultimate Descendants, I think the rest of the store is pretty fair and pretty standard for cosmetics, skins, and materials. I think it has a lot of great things going for it, and obviously there are some things that can be improved upon too, which is normal for any new game. But I know this game will be staying on my frequently played list, especially as they continue to drop more content in the future. Now I'm going to swing over to my favorite Descendants that I was talking about before. I'm going to kind of show you guys my builds if you were curious and wanted to copy it. Obviously the meta could change if you're watching this later, but this is what I'm working with so far. Alright, so now as promised, I'm going to show you guys my favorite bossing build in the game, which just happens to be on the newest character in the game, which is Haley. So first thing I have on is the Slayer component set. The 4 set gives more rounds to the mag, skill cost, and skill power, which is really nice. I don't really have the best perks on it yet, which again is totally fine because the barrier to entry to getting really good damage with Haley is a lot lower than it is with other Descendants if you want to get really good damage. You can either use a purple or gold frozen reactor as long as it has chill skill and singular skill power boost ratio on it. Again, the perks below, I actually got a decent reactor on this one with Colossus damage and singular skill power boost ratio, which is nice. The only thing you really need for Haley to increase her 4 damage, her 4th ability damage, is piercing light, or you could use another sniper too, but this is what I prefer. This is what I have so far. Again, still a work in progress. I've only been able to slot 1 mod on this weapon, but the biggest and most important thing is having your rounds per magazine up, because this will help allow you to get more ammo for your 4th ability damage. This is what I have so far for mods. As you'll notice, this isn't upgraded at all because it doesn't increase the skill power. It only increases defense, which I could slot another 3 points, but I don't feel like it's too necessary. Increased HP, that way, I mean, you are still kind of a glass cannon, but you're not literally a walking twig. Dangerous Ambush is great, especially if you're able to proc the 49.8% buff on an immobilized enemy. Chill skill power, obviously, because Haley's a chill character, you want to get that maxed out, 81.2%. Emergency measures is great. You don't really do it much for the critical hit rate because, as you can see on the left, I'm already at 207%, which is more than 100%. You're more in it for the critical hit damage. And then I have long distance maneuvering. This is kind of personal preference here, but this is what I prefer. And then front lines, basically, again, we're trying to max out our skill critical hit damage is basically the main focus of the Haley mods. Again, skill concentration adds to that. Skill insight, which, I mean, that in itself gets you to 100%, which is great. Reduced skill cost is awesome, especially if you're trying to use all of Haley's abilities without worrying too much about your MP. And then Glacial to add another 10.2% to your chill skill power. So then, as you'll see, as we bring this together, a great one to show it on is hard mode Pyromaniac. As you'll see, is obviously very weak to chill damage. Again, even at an entry level, if you get half decent components in a reactor, Haley can go a long way with damage. All right, so we want to make sure we have our sniper out for the mounting condition. And then we got to make sure we get 12 chill stacks. So I'm going to pop it now. Never mind, I hit the wrong thing. Guido, cut that. Then we need to pop our chill stacks. We need to get our chill stacks to 12, so we're hitting maximum damage with Haley here. We're going to pop our 4 ability, and we're going to start off with that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't even really have to aim very well. I didn't even warm up. 22 million damage in 4 shots, and I believe I still had 3 shots left. I still don't have a max Haley build because I'm pretty sure the maximum amount of shots you can get with the 4 ability is 8 shots. I have 7, which again, I find to be plenty, especially when the boss evaporates in 4 shots. This is definitely one of those bosses that people get stuck on, and going back and kicking his ass later is very satisfying.